Streaming. We are streaming a little background music for this morning's BetaCodex Live. Hello, I'm Ryan Erickson. Happy to be here with you this Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern, as we usually are, and extremely curious to go into where we have laid the groundwork for the topic this week. And to begin with that, you hear the rumblings of someone in the background. It is none other than Niels Pflaeging. Hello, Niels. How are you this fine now?
Hello, Ryan. Hello, everybody. I'm good. We didn't prepare this much before this. Usually we have a little pre-session meeting. We didn't have that today, I think, but I think we can handle it. We are both anxious to talk about this topic, right?
Yes, very, very much so. And I have a feeling this may be another sub-series of what we do here, because the folks that I know, at least, who in my circle who are interested in the BetaCodex come from the Agile domain. That's kind of where I came from. And that may lead to certain discussions of possibly provocative nature. I don't know.
Yes. I mean, we want to be a little bit provocative, of course, but also it should be clear that we will not be judging Agile or Lean or BetaCodex in a negative way. I mean, we kind of hold up, we have high opinions of those three movements and concepts, but there is critique, right? Of course. That might be. And we don't have to agree, of course. Neither Ryan, you and I, we don't have to agree, and nor does anybody else. We want to have a thoughtful conversation about this today, I think, right? And maybe it will not be a closing conversation at all.
I would hope not. We shall be open and inviting for those who may want to join us now and into the future. Yeah. So one thing that got me going on this particular topic was an image you shared that was a little cryptic to me, and that I would like to share here with our audience, and then maybe we can walk through it. So that would be this.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So and the theme unity, not tribalism, that I think it's implying some stuff here. But yes, when you put this out there, what were you thinking? What were you trying to convey?
Yes, I mean, there's some bias in this. Yeah, if you look at it, it's clear, I think, from looking at it, that I'm looking at this topic. I shared this, right? I wrote this, I shared this, that I'm looking at the topic from the BetaCodex point of view mainly, right? That's why in the first two lines it says BetaCodex Plus, and there's an accent on BetaCodex, but that shouldn't limit anybody's perception. And of course, this came out of the work I'm doing in German language, not in English, with a German community, Lean Base, it's called. And we recorded a 10 episode video series on lean transformation. And of course, when I prepared this 2 or 3 months ago, when I kind of prepared the concept and the script for that video recording, I had to think deeply again about, okay, how do I relate to lean transformation, to lean, and so on. Yeah. And of course, we always have this conversation among us. Ryan, we have this conversation all the time, right? What's the relationship between lean, BetaCodex and Agile, or Scrum and BetaCodex, and so on? So this comes, I mean, this tries to sum up that, there should be synergy and growing together. And let's make this the first a little bit negative comment, or pessimistic or critical comment in today's episode. I do not see that synergetic relationship happening so much. I do not see approximation of Lean Agile BetaCodex movements right now, and I think it should be there, and that's the thing in the first. And the whole thing is about this.
Yeah,
I wish these siblings would finally come together.
That there would be harmony, possibly.
Yes, harmony, more than harmony, sameness. I think there should be sameness. When I saw not sure what you think about this, Ryan, and you should add your perspective to this, but I've been in the business for 20 years, And at the time, Lean was all the rage, total quality first a little bit, then Lean collapsed at a certain point, not sure which year, 2000, 2005, somewhere there, collapsed. And then Agile rose up. And both movements, I thought, and of course, at the time of Lean, I was already active in Beyond Budgeting. So I always hoped that Lean and Beyond Budgeting would come together, then that Agile and BetaCodex would come together, that Agile would broaden. But it didn't, right? Supposedly everything is Agile. There's Agile everything right now, but it hasn't. The foundations have not been enriched. I looked at the manifesto of Agile software development today. It looks pretty much like 25 years ago.
Well, yeah, and that's a and we don't even begin to talk about Scrum. And there's all sorts of useless and pointless debates about the immutability of Scrum and what that means. So the rules of the game are defined, but it's that. But talking about
this is a great point. So one of the notes that I made before with this conversation, and this is related to what you just said, Ryan. I mean, we will when we talk about this, I think we should always relate to the scripture that is, right? There is scripture, like in religion. There's a Bible for Christians, and there's the Quran for Islam, and there's the Torah for Jewish faith, and these are scriptures. And there are many other scriptures, of course. Every religion, every faith at a certain point developed a scripture, and so did Lean, Agile, and BetaCodex. In fact, there are several scriptures. BetaCodex has a scripture, which are the 12 principles or laws of the BetaCodex. Agile has probably the manifesto of Agile software development. You might say that the Scrum Guide is scripture as well. And then there's a question of what that entails and if it's good scripture or not good scripture. And Lean has several sets of principles. There are the 14 Leica principles, and there are the 14 principles of Deming that I prefer. But of course, these scriptures can be interpreted. So we might have sub-tribes, of course, interpreting the scripture differently. But we don't have that in BetaCodex right now, by the way, but the others.
In terms of the alternative interpretations of the scripture, say?
Yeah, I mean, each individual, each believer will have an individual interpretation, of course. Yeah, I mean,
when we talk about
tribes or sects.
Well, the 12 tribes of Israel, right, as we say in the Jewish
faith. I mean,
and,
Catholics, Protestants, and the 100 other sects of Christianism, for example. Christians are strongly divided by sects and churches and so on. And there are so many, right? Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, etc.
Right.
All these are tribes.
Well, and then again, and you're hitting the point right on the head. The Church of Agile, that thou shalt have a mindset where this is that and this is that and the other, and the 4 values and 12 principles as defined, and just because they're defined on that webpage in that document doesn't mean that the receipt of those words mean the same thing to different people.
Yes.
And I think in Daniel Mezek's work, and this is how I came to know you and Open Space Beta and everything, he talks about when you do a transformation, and that one of the first things you need to do is come to agreement on the language. Like, what does Agile mean here? What does Scrum mean? What does Kanban mean? And are we going to define them by what terms? Do we agree on those terms? And then once we have that language soup that's cooking, that we're all in, that we understand, then we can go further with it.
Yes. So, and of course, most people in all these movements, BetaCodex maybe not so much, but in the other movements are all too often lazily jumping to doing and implementing and tooling instead of sitting back together. And that's what in open space agility or open space beta, the open spaces are for, right? To communitize, socialize the words, the meanings, the understandings at that given point of view. Given point of time. Yeah. This is a very rich conversation we are having. By the way, I think if this story Daniel Mezek, for example, he would be a great leader of another sect of Agile, but so far it hasn't happened, which is surprising. I think he's very much a Jesus of a certain Agile movement. He has this thing. right? A very American thing to it, but yeah, he could be.
The
tribe, you just mentioned it, right?
Yeah, and there's sub tribes and all that kind of, and everyone's got do the to be a little vulgar about it, to be the dog peeing in your territory, that this is my intellectual property and this is my way of Agile. You can't do it that. So you can stay over there, and we won't talk. I have defined 14 principles in this way, and they are better than those 4 and 12.
Yes.
Well, you might, blah 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 blah. Can't we just all get along?
When you just talked before, you gave me this idea. We talked about religion, of course, already, sects and so on, and all sects and cults, and they strive for power, of course. They want to become churches because a church means that you have formal, legal, stately power. That's why it's important for every sect or cult to become a church at a certain point of view. But there's a fantastic movie about the start of the Christian religion. Not sure if you have seen it. The main actress in this movie is Rachel Weisz. It's a terrible movie. It's not to watch at night before you want to go to sleep, because it's one of the most terrifying. It's like a horror movie. It's not a horror movie, but I think it's one of the most horrible. Like Alien, the first movie. It's a terrible thing. And you just mentioned a thing, Ryan, that I think is part of this discussion. You mentioned the Agile Mindset, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if there is scripture, then what is this kind of mindset supposed to mean? I think it's, and this is a parallel to the rise of Christian faith in history, and also in that movie. It's well depicted in that movie, I think, because the Christians at the beginning, when they took on power, they loved stoning others, throw stones at them, so they would die and perish. It's a very important movie. The early Christians in that movie, they always have these leather bags with some stones. They can have some stoning, of non-believers, people with the wrong mindset. That's what the term, right? I mean, I know this is polemic, but there's I think this is serious. As a German, I know how the beginnings sound of this kind of thing. We learned this. We discussed this. German history thing that's in this. So when you start talking about distinguishing people with the right mindset and the wrong mindset, or insinuating that others do not have the right mindset, then you're just a few inches away from stoning some people, burning them or hanging them or whatever might be the flavor of the century. And so I think this mindset thing is very insinuating. It's very toxic. We should talk about scripture. We should talk more about quality of scripture. I think that's what Daniel Mezek does, what we try to do, I think, here in this session as well.
And so, and then that we talk about scripture and religion and all that stuff. The word that comes to mind sometimes is dogma. That if a person is so deeply in belief and so loud and provocative, whatever you say, that the criticism comes that it's dogmatic, that you're saying this stuff about Agile this, Agile that, or Lean this, or in our case, that BetaCodex is the only way, and thou shalt do this, and thou not do that, and if you do this other thing, you're shit, and that is, it's a valid criticism in the religious sect, and I think in the Agile sect, and I would say, I know I've been criticized for being. I'm so excited about how we might decentralize organizations and I think do all this stuff.
Yeah, accusing somebody else of being dogmatic is like saying to another person, "You're so arrogant." That doesn't exist, really. I mean, it's very hard to find somebody who's really arrogant. Usually, the feeling that somebody else is arrogant comes from one's own feeling of inferiority. I have this sometimes, that I think
projection.
The person is arrogant, but maybe this person is just more knowledgeable than I about certain aspects, And dogma, I mean, if you look, I looked it up. Did you look it up already?
I didn't. I had looked it up previously, but
the dogma. I mean, one of the roots of, or one of the meanings of the word dogma is to have a point of view, a firm position. That's a dogma. A dogma is a position. So if you say you are dogmatic, that is a very lovely way to say that you seem to have a fairly solid position, which might be good. For example, the Pope has a fairly dogmatic position, and the rabbi, any kind of whatever rigor a rabbi or a pope also has, or any cleric, of course everybody has a dogma. We all have a dogma, But I mean, it's good to be conscious of the limits of one's own dogma, and I think that's the critical point. So to call each other dogmatic, that's like saying you have the wrong mindset. It's really. I prefer to say to somebody, look, John Jorgensen, you have a lovely dogma. It's different from mine, by the way, and it's good that we can distinguish it. But you have a dogma about Scrum that I may share or not, or you have a dogma on Agile. So if you have a point of view, a standing point, if you have a position that is well educated, of course you have a dogma. It's a terrible way to insult a person. It's not even an insult. It's of course, when we say dogmatic,
how dare you believe
it's not really a negative thing.
Well,
as long as you do not stone people who have a different dogma, then being dogmatic is wrong, of course, right?
Well, but then it comes to the point. Well, that then there's the idea of heresy and apostasy in the religious area.
And of course, we need that in science. Science is organized heresy, yes, of assumptions of dogma. So yeah, that's what we're talking about in this session, right?
Well, yeah, and again, what are the consequences for stating an opinion or set of opinions so clearly and vigorously, and what are the consequences of that? You're going to get challenged.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it like this: every Lean Agile's BetaCodex, in my mind, there are different expressions, different forms of expression of the same fundamental belief system. However, the movements, it's like a church. In a church, the scripture becomes secondary because the church, the hierarchical structure, the instruments, the stuff becomes more important. Like in the Agile movement, one might argue that today, the Scrum Alliance and the Agile Alliance and whatever they have, Scrum.org,
Scrum.org,
those institutions by now, and the tools like Kanban and Scrum have become more important than Agile. I think that's a fair point to make. Or in Lean, it's very clear, I mean, that few people today promote Lean as it is written in the scriptures.
So, meaning the Toyota production system,
Lean Six Sigma, all that shit. It has declined into cheap toolism, right? Which we discussed.
Yeah. The tool heads, right? The tool.
Yes, most churches become tool head institutions, right? That's what churches. I mean, one might argue that when a religion creates a church, it's already declined into meaninglessness. The religion has already declined so much in quality which is interesting about Judaism, that it doesn't really have a church, of course, or Buddhism, that it doesn't have a church. So this argument might be refined and be put into more, reflected more in context. But one might argue that once a religion becomes a church, it's done in terms of quality, or the quality of ethics and achievement and aspiration. Yeah? Then it wants to defend only itself. I think that has happened with Agile, or the Agile industrial complex, as Daniel mentioned.
Once an institution becomes self-sufficient in that way, it's is self-serving, and it's interested in self-preservation.
Yeah. No. Right. What did you say? I interrupted you.
No, self-preservation. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, such self-preservation, the desire of self-preservation in any organization is natural. So this is not an inherent criticism. It's just a reflection of the reality of dogma. What happens with dogma? First, it's a faith. Then it becomes a religion. Then it becomes a church. What happened? And this is interesting for the story we want to talk about. I mean, what is the faith of Lean, Agile, and the BetaCodex? And one might say, well, it's that faith that sometimes is called the Toyota production system, or the Toyota way, or the Handelsbanken way, to put it more beta-like, or the W.L. Gore way, or the Southwest Airlines way, or the Burzog way, or the
Simcoe.
Right? So this is where it comes from, and from people like Ricardo Semler, and of course people like Mary Parker Follett. So there are individuals that have promoted this faith, the gurus, so to speak. There have been practitioners, cases, and then the scriptures were derived, of course, to solve different problems, right? Production problems, mainly at the beginning of Lean, but W. Edwards Deming already had a much broader view of quality and lean than Agile wanted to solve. And this is very visible, I think. I took a look today again at the Agile
Manifesto.
Which expresses clearly that it aims at improving the life of software developers mainly, and of the output, the outcome of software.
We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Which some people say that even all the rest of the stuff, that's less important than that first little preamble. Yes. We are uncovering better ways. The lean principles, respect for people, continuous improvement, and you got to have that in the core of what you're doing. And then, of course, I won't alliterate all the beta principles, but we know what they are. But so to be principle centered and to be willing to be in dialogue in pursuit of an agreed upon shared outcome that we're going to, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to have respect for people. We're going to keep improving, and we want to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, responding to change over following a plan, working software, again in the Agile Manifesto, over comprehensive documentation, and customer collaboration over negotiated contracts or strict firm, contracts. God, I can't believe I forgot that word in there. But it is, and I think that's where are they the same? They're different views of what domain you're in, right? So obviously the lean world coming from TPS in manufacturing, or in auto manufacturing, Agile from software development, and then the origins of the BetaCodex are again from the research and beyond budgeting and Handelsbanken. But I think that may be how, at least in my mind, how the BetaCodex serves as a unifying factor for these elements. Because if we have the kind of beta organization, then lean works better. It's a natural way to hold the lean process, however you want to define methods, process, techniques that deliver value, or in software and Agile, or you can all this kind of stuff. So in my mind, it just that's where it makes sense, is that beta is such a great container, and alignment in harmony with unity, possibly those principles.
Yes, and then there's this. I mean, in my little post that you shared before, can you share it again?
Oh, yes.
That's what you just expressed. The first two lines. You just expressed the first two lines of that post, right?
Hey, come on.
Like if you add BetaCodex to Lean, or vice versa, Lean to BetaCodex, then it becomes more functional. Or if you add BetaCodex and Agile, it becomes love. That means, of course, optimum, love, functionality, unity, and so on. But the second part, I think, is important too. Which is why, I mean, the first thing I came up with was the first line, and then I came up with the second line. I turned it into different tweets, right? And then finally, and of course, I felt bad putting the shit heap there in the other lines, but still, there is this criticism here as well, which I think what you just summed up, Ryan, doesn't quite capture this idea that there is a criticism here and that lean principles alone are not enough, or usually when lean is practiced or thought or done or dogmatized, it's insufficient, so it will turn to crap. Not because lean is bad, but because lean is not enough. It needs the BetaCodex. That's the idea of these last two lines here. I mean, it's very graphic, of course, and you might say, of course, it's not criticizing anybody. The idea is here to hint people to point at the fact that, I mean, if Lean, Agile, and the BetaCodex were all derived from the great thinkers like Mary Potter followed onwards, and from the great cases like Toyota, W. Gore, Semco, and so on, self-organization, democratic workplace, decentralization, and so on, then the principles of Lean, the scripture of Lean, is insufficient. You see that I have all these books about Toyota in my library, by Mr. Leica and many, many others. And I always find they are very boring, very insufficient, and even the one book that Leica at the end wrote about people, and that people are the essence of it. Like he wrote so much books, and then he wrote another book saying, yeah, and people are really the most important thing. I forgot to tell the story. It's not what he did exactly, but it's pretty much this, the human side of enterprise, as McGregor calls it. It should be the first. I mean, the underpinnings, and this is my main point here. Lean, Agile, and BetaCodex share the same idea fundamentally, and must share the same fundamental assumptions about human nature, which McGregor calls theory Y. The assumption, which is scientifically correct, by the way, yes, that people are intrinsically motivated, need not be and cannot be motivated, that people want to make an effort at work, want to improve, that people grow happy through work and not can be happy at work in spite of the work. That's not what it is. So Lean, Agile, and BetaCodex, whatever order sequence you put them, they share this belief, which is present in those companies as well, and which has been articulated by Mary Parker Follett and onwards.
Yeah. The theme of humane, I guess the Humane Organization. When we have an organization, what are we organizing anyway? Aren't we just organizing people? Aren't we just bringing people together to serve other people through other? We're bringing life together, living beings together to manipulate the dead stuff to give to other living human beings in pursuit of shared value and creation of that. So I mean that's like at the bottom of all this stuff. Can we just be humane and treat each other as equals, not as I am pushing authority down to you or you pushing information or whatever. We are sharing. We are with each other for each other. Thank you, Mary Parker Follett, for that. And that's universal. That's not just in terms of how we deliver value in terms of corporate and business terms, delivering products and services to one another, but it's how we are together when we make art, when we perform together, when in musically or in theater. This is the idea that there's a director out there in the audience, or there's a conductor, but who's doing the work? Who is it all for? It's all for the people we're serving together, and that I think is what brings all these things. What's the point of even having 12 principles in BetaCodex? Is because it's to remind us that we are an us. It's not an us and them. It's that we're in this together. And at the root of Agile, I know is that, and that's where it kind of came from. And I don't know, did you also read the history page on the manifesto document?
Yeah. I had a conversation with some of the signatories as well, and so on.
Yeah. So Jim, the history is, for me, is the favorite part of Jim Highsmith's history, that he talks about this kind of the unseen force, like what was happening at the time. And it wasn't just about doing twice the work in half the time or doing more stuff faster and iterating. It was about this sense of, I don't want to live in a Dilbert world anymore. I am as a evolving human being. I have needs of whatever transcendence or a need for a greater sense of knowledge and purpose at work. And sure. That kind of got lost in the 4 and 12 and all the machinations of manufacturing software and feature factories and all that stuff. But it is that core humanity that just, if you really look deeply and intentionally at all of these 3 areas that we're talking about today, you see it and you feel it, and it just gives me that warm feeling inside that if you're involved with this stuff, you're involved with something that is good for humanity, and that is moves us forward as a species, I think.
Yes. I would argue that Agile was, of course, came out as a self-defense movement of self-defense or self-saving, saving us software developers. I think very similarly, something similar happened with quality. And I mean, total quality came out of the rise of Japan. Japan meant as Japanese manufacturers. Lean came out of the misery of production. The BetaCodex came out of misery of finance people. Ultimately, beyond budgeting, I mean, that was about also about liberating finance people from the bane of annual planning and this kind of shit. So yes, I mean, all these movements or dogmas have their roots in a dire need. There was a perception of
pain. In pain.
Yeah. We are stuck. I mean, that's brilliantly put in the Agile Manifesto, by the way. We are stuck, right? The same happened pretty much in Beyond Budgeting. Pretty much happened in which became the BetaCodex, and in Lean, which has several ancestors like Total Quality and so on. And also, I mean, they got all inspired by Toyota. Played a big part in all three movements. So they are all drinking from at least partly the same sources. And then if you look at the details philosophically, they all drink from the same sources, which go back to, Edwards Deming, Drucker, Follett, and so on. I mean, we've talked about these heroes a couple of times. I see. I would argue that now that the Agile industrial complex has taken over Agile, there is a dire need for reform. That's also why I wrote that little tweet, the 4-line tweet. I think we have to wake up to the need to unify those movements. I think the depreciation that has happened in Lean and Agile must come to an end. And in a way, of course, the BetaCodex suffers from a different kind of problem, which is the lack of acknowledgement in a way that that we need a more rounded set of principles. I would argue that the BetaCodex is most rounded set of principles of them all. I think Deming's 14 points are very similar in terms of scope. Not the same, but similar in terms of scope. But then the Agile Manifesto, if I may say so, is for logical reasons, for obvious reasons, much tighter. It needs.
Well, the thing is, it's the attempts have been, and some have been lauded and adopted to extrapolate into other parts of a business of operations form the patterns of iterative software development or iterative and incremental software development. Well, and that's so we're trying to take a key that fits this lock to unlock delivering software faster, and we're trying to put that in a door that doesn't match.
That's what that's what it is. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And again, some folks, because they are so convinced and so immersed in the belief system that is the manifesto for Agile software development and the Agile movement, is that they can make those bridges and say, oh, well, we're not talking about software really. We're talking about people. We're talking about marketing, or we're talking about we're talking about paper airplanes, whatever, and we're not talking about software.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where these, again, for me, that's why it is so. That's why has Agile transformation been failed in so many iterations?
Yes.
Where
I would say it never happened. There has been no Agile, as far as I know. I do not believe that the Agile transformation ever happened.
Well, because you can define it however you want to.
Yes. Okay. But even if we take the, let's say, 16 principles of the Agile Manifesto, they're the 4 major principles, 12 minor. So I'd always said that there are 16 all in all. It doesn't really matter how you count them, but I think they're all principles. So that's the core of the
the trainers say it matters, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, there's the meta principles, or the higher principles, and the lower principles, or something like that, right? Or the basic principles and the higher principles. Okay, but show me a place where that has happened, really. the whole set, or almost the whole set, that we could confidently say, yes, we can tick them off, and that has happened. Not sure if that happened. I don't see it. I would say, but from my personal point of view, that even if that were the case, first of all, I think it's impossible to reach. And second, even if it were the case, it would be too little, because the Agile Codex is too flimsy. And there are things, inconsistencies, there are blind spots.
Between the values and principles, or are you saying inconsistencies between what it is designed to do and what?
No, I think not between them, but there are blind spots. Stuff that, like how to pay people, how to organize things.
Oh yeah,
that's not covered. So those blind. That's what I'm referring to. Yeah, thank you for correcting me.
And this is the huge criticism of Scrum, is that it is so purposefully incomplete is to be useless in some folks. Al Shalloway,
it's interesting that not even the principles of the Agile Manifesto are repeated in the Scrum Guide, right? They aren't.
No,
right?
No. Well, the Scrum values, focus, commitment, openness, respect, and
very vague, and the language of so-called values, which do not amount to much, because who would say I'm not open?
So, you're not open. You're not open.
Yeah, that's like throw a stone at me. Take a stone from your leather bag and throw it at me. Yes, exactly. The other person is always not as open as we are, right?
And you have a fixed mindset. So who, I think we talked about this, who would actually go out there and say, oh, I have a fixed mindset. I am so proud of that. You have a growth mindset. That's not
the other people who are not here, they always have this fixed mindset, and we have the growth mindset.
It's right? Those damn managers.
We say so because we're so humble. We are such humble leaders, we don't even say it out that we have growth. That's the way we talk today, right? It's highly depreciating, And of course, but let me put it like this: I'm not criticizing the Agile Manifesto. I think it is a remarkable piece of writing. They only spent 2 days together and put this together. Very remarkable.
Well, they really only came out of Snowbird with 4 values, and the 12 principles happened in email back and forth over.
Yeah. I forgot this for months. Yeah, okay, but still, the whole thinking is very remarkable and very coherent. I think it's just not enough, and you would only. I think this is the point I hope we are trying to make, or making. Only when you put these principles into practice, you could research what problems will occur and what other principles you need. And in Beyond Budgeting, for example, this was done. This is one of the differences. So when the Beyond Budgeting principles came up in 1999, 2000, 2001, there were several iterations, and they were reviewed a couple of times. And then, of course, we turned them into the BetaCodex and did another revision in 2018 and so on. So there were several iterations. Why? Because, of course, once you start putting this into practice, you learn things that inform you about the blind spots, or what haven't you thought about. For example, we added to the BetaCodex, we added a couple of principles of transformation, very fast organizational transformation. It has 5 other principles: invitation, not coercion, time boxing, not whatever,
endless consulting engagements.
So in a way, to the 12 principles of the BetaCodex, we had to add we never celebrated, now we have 5 more principles, so it's 17 now. We never did this, right? But in a way, we said, okay, this is the organizational model, 12 principles, and then we add principles for transformation. We could also add principles for self-structure design, add principles for relative targets, and for open space beta. We did that, actually. So in the BetaCodex, I think, and I hope that this happens in the same way with Agile and Lean. I wish the day would come where the Agile and Lean movements would say, yeah, let's add a bunch of principles to that to finally get our act together and stop the decline into terrorism. Right?
Well, it's
stop the decline. I mean, in beta, it's very important, for example, for the BetaCodex movement. If we do not evolve conceptually, there will be decline, in quality, in thinking, in even sanity. Yeah. So we have to keep improving.
Well, I think that sounds like another episode down the road or soon, about where is where are these principles going, and how are they evolving, and what has changed, from 2008 to 2018 to 2023, and what's the vector of change, and where are we going with all this stuff? So
yes, I wish people in Agile would say, okay, let's put the principles of this Agile Manifesto of software development and the BetaCodex principles together. Then we have something that's pretty decent, pretty robust, pretty cool, pretty multi-layered, and then we can transform entire organizations, and make the promise of Agile happen everywhere potentially, not just in software development.
Well, I think this. I think I was trying to say this a little earlier. This is just one of maybe it's my dogma, but it is Agile from the inside out. Coming from IT teams, within that tower that is in many places seen as a cost center. There's the pressure is to say, make that thing, IT delivery of software, cost less, even if it's delivered to the market, so I think at its core, doing scaling of that is just, it's a fool's errand, and that only by decentralizing authority and creating pull all around in the peach, at the skin of the peach, and to say, oh, let's create flow from our capacities out to the market. And I think that's the message that needs to be, like what Cotter would say. You need to say it 7 times. You need to keep saying the same message, and do that leadership storytelling about, Agile transformation, whatever software, digital transformation, whatever you're talking about. It really has to be driven by a need and a problem or an opportunity to be captured, and that has to be outside. You do it. You pull from the outside, not push it,
Yes,
pull, not push.
I think the Agile movement is stuck in this wrong-headed incrementalism. And it would be much more win-win, good for everybody if Agilists said it's much easier to do Agile with Beta combined, and it's much easier. We don't have to get lost in tools and pitiful, trainings and certifications. We can actually transform organizations, and I think that quest for actual transformation, this can only be like a call to action. We need to make this happen. The BetaCodex movement clearly needs to make this happen as well. We have to make transformation happen.
The Beta call to action.
Yeah,
there's an episode.
and yeah, I like to say that Beta is self-organization, is leadership, is decentralization, is democracy. If not, what is it good for? And I think the same goes for Agile and for Lean. If we fall short of this ambition, to bring about full-fledged organizational self-organization, decentralization, democracy, if we fall short of that ambition, then what are we doing? We're just filling our pockets with dirt, with dirty diamonds, dirty silver and dirty gold.
Well, my friend, it appears that we are reaching a decrescendo.
We will be happy to talk about this in the Zoom session that's indicated here in the bottom row, right? And we might continue this topic in another BetaCodex live session as well.
Absolutely. Of course.
Yes.
That's it. I am going to turn up the music, and we'll see what that sounds like.
Yes, please access live, and we meet there in Zoom in a minute.
Yes. Yeah. You got it. Thank you, Niels.
See you soon.
Thanks, everybody. It has been a great topic, a great talk, and I look forward to joining you all again in the future. Be well. Thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention.